Welcome to POSTCAST. David Locke along with Ron Boone after the Utah Jazz fall 103-100 to the Dallas Mavericks. How are you going to let Luka beat you? Well, that's how Dallas got the Jazz on the key final possession. But the other question is, where did the threes go? We're going to try to figure that all out coming up on tonight's edition of POSTCAST. David Locke along with Ron Boone as the Utah Jazz fall tonight to the Dallas Mavericks 103-101. And the Mavericks got a brilliant performance from Luka Doncic, which carried most of the way tonight. But then late in the ball game, the Jazz got the ball out of Luka's hands. He rotated Dinwiddie, got it to the corner to Reggie Bullock. That was the backbreaker. And it's an interesting moment because what you really want to have happen is have somebody other than Luka beat you. And what they did is impressive on their end is they had somebody else other than Luka beat you.
Yeah, Dinwiddie, they isolated him quite a bit, and he knocked down some threes there as well. But when they isolated him, he was able to sometimes drive to the basket, but he also got, some other, teammates involved. They play much faster when Luka's not on the floor, and Dinwiddie, for the most part, becomes the focal point. But the dagger was from Bullock. This is a guy that's, for the year, shooting 40% from the three-point line, career 36, was having a terrible night shooting the basketball. Terrible night even getting shots up, and he ends up making a big one other night.
So you look through this game, that's the big play, the Reggie Bullock three that kind of broke the back. The problem in this night is that you get to a close game with 5 minutes left and they have Luka. And that's virtually impossible to guard. Larry Markkinen picked him up, but they're switching. They're getting Mike Conley on guys. They took advantage of a bunch of mismatches. Christian Wood abused Rudy Gay for 4 or 5 possessions on a tough matchup. So, that's the problem is you got to this moment. So let's go back. The Jazz were up 15. They played brilliantly at times. They were up at the end of the first quarter by a score of 35-23. By halftime, it's 3. By the fourth quarter, they still hold it off. They have it at 4. They hold these things off the whole time. But they get to the 5-minute mark, and it's tied, and that's Luka's show. So looking back at the first 43 minutes of the night, what didn't allow the Jazz to kind of have that cushion that they needed at that point?
Okay, so we back this up maybe to that second quarter, and then this is probably one of the few times all year long when the Jazz have had a combination out there on the floor that struggled. Where everyone struggled for the most part because they just could not get anything done. They only scored 15 points in that second quarter. In a quarter that where the Mavericks were struggling, they couldn't make any shots, and all of a sudden the Jazz couldn't make any shots there as well. So I don't know. It didn't seem like the style of play changed. They just wasn't knocking down some shots. That would have been nice if the Jazz could have stretched the league out a little bit farther in that quarter, but that didn't happen.
So interesting. The Jazz came in the game as the third most proficient three-point shooting team. They've taken 42% of their shots as threes. They go 0 for 7 in the second quarter. They go 0 for 4 in the fourth quarter. We have 2 quarters tonight where the Jazz did not make a three.
Yeah, and for the most part, David, those weren't very good looks there as well. So they went to a zone, and whenever the Jazz they were trying to get all the way to the basket for the most part. And Colin Sexton is one of those guys. Conley got into the paint there a few times, but it's going to happen every now and then. But that zone is something I think the Jazz are going to have to work on.
You were really on it tonight on a few points, so let's go to what did the zone? You just touched on it a little bit there, but I want you to elaborate a little more. And then we'll touch on the other defensive thing they did, because you nailed both of them during the broadcast tonight. What did the zone really do to Utah? What is it that it makes you do?
Well, with their size out front, you got Luka, you had Bullock, and you had Dinwiddie. Those are your 1-2-2 or your 3-2 type zone that they were playing, and they were switching all over the floor. And the Jazz were staying on the perimeter. Once they were able to break the paint, they were going all the way, so it turned into not a draw and kick to the point where they weren't looking for a three-point shot. Colin Sexton and Clarkson both, trying to get all the way to the basket. So those three-point shot attempts were not good. Now, the downside of that is that the offensive rebounds are, it's hard to get them, or you should be able to get them. But when the Mavericks missed shots, the Jazz transition wasn't generating any three-point shots there as well.
I don't know what the final numbers are. We had a number at one point in the game, and I can check it here in a second, where the Jazz in the half court were 0.8, and in transition they were 1.6. So they were
Big
2
difference.
times better in transition, and we brought it up during the broadcast. And the feeling was, I said, like, we've got to get more transition. We were at about 16, 70% transition at that point. I didn't feel like we had much transition at all after that moment. In fact, I'm looking at the numbers. We finished at just 14% of our possessions in transition. Dallas, their usual stunningly low number. So we didn't get transition tonight. We were at 1.25 points per possession in transition. We ended up at 0.9 in the half court, which is a little below average. But we took the fewest amount of threes, didn't get transition, didn't get a lot of the scripts by which follow for the Jazz to win basketball games. The other one, Ron, you pointed out really nicely during the broadcast, was we were driving and getting in the paint, which is our whole premise. And then they were suffocating us in the paint.
They just clogged it up. Clogged the paint up, and the Jazz were, again, forcing shots once they got into the paint, was not able to find open three-point shooters. But just the bottom line.
Feels so similar to the playoffs. We said that we sat in this building with the same background, with the same tilted camera up our nose, that we and we said the same things. Like the Jazz couldn't get threes off Dallas and Jason Kidd's Mavericks last year in the playoffs either.
Usually, David, when teams are running a 3-2 or 1-2-2 or something like that, you get a passer at the free throw line. You get him the basketball. Now you can make some things happen. You can turn, or if no one's there, you can probably get to the basket. But there's always going to be a wing open left or right because someone has to come over and help. And you can usually get some ball movement to the point where you can get a three-point shot off. And Rudy Gay did it a couple of times, but other than that, we didn't see much of it.
Cool moment down the floor. Jazz coach Jason Terry taking pictures of people. Jet was obviously a legend out here and won a championship with the Mavericks. Jordan Clarkson continues to be marvelous, Ron. 22 points. I think he had 8 assists tonight. This is just fun to watch. This is just a completely different player than what we've seen before.
Different player, and it is fun to watch. And knowing that, there's another side of his game that we hadn't seen since he had been here. Starting different than what he was, what it is when he comes off the bench. But it's great to see him being able to play 2 roles.
All right, time for our 2 stars of the night. Any suggestions in the chat room are welcome. Actually, before we actually do that, just some thoughts on Luka. I don't want to dismiss. We just watched 33, 5, and 11. He did have 5 turnovers. I actually think that they made Luka work as hard tonight as he probably has on any night all year.
Yeah, we talked about how much fun it is watching Jordan Clarkson play and all these things, but it's also just watching the Jazz play, period. It's also a ton of fun watching Luka because the game just looks so easy to him. And he can get where he wants to out there on the floor. He's never in a hurry. It's like you can't shake him or anything like that. And he's just one of those players that can dominate the game. Those kind of players only come by every now and then, and he's very special.
All right, some votes coming in for our 2 stars. RRR says JC and Vanderbilt. Andy says Sexton and Clarkson. So that's 2 votes for Clarkson, 1 for Sexton, 1 for Vanderbilt. Let's see. What do you got, Ron Boone?
I'm going to give it to our starting guards, Clarkson and Conley.
Oh, you're going Mike Conley as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go Clarkson and Conley.
8 assists each move you on that
It's either 16 of her 28 assists came from those 2 guys there. Sexton would be my 3rd choice.
I'll agree with you tonight. How's that?
About time.
It is about time. I didn't have a strong. Colin did some nice things, but I didn't have a strong feeling on that one. So if you're going with Mike Conley's 8 assists, holding it together, +4 on the night. Another 32 minutes is a lot for Mike tonight, having to guard Luka Doncic a lot of the time, getting switched onto him.
Okay, the Jazz averaged 29 assists a game. They had 28.
Yep.
The Mavericks averaged 19 assists a game. They had 20.
Yeah.
So
the Mavericks not averaging assists is a misleading number because they usually shoot free throws. But the Jazz did not foul Luka tonight the way he has been fouled. Well, he shot 10, so
10
I guess they fouled. They didn't foul everybody else. I will say one thing: Kelly Olynyk's foul trouble was detrimental tonight.
Huge, yes,
and so it's kind of been this cute story of our guys foul so much and they're aggressive and we don't want to take that away from them. But like tonight, I would say is the time it flew to the other side of that pendulum.
Yeah, he's averaging 4 fouls a game.
Yeah, we needed him on the floor a little bit more than he was as well. All right, that is POSTCAST. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll give you a Locked on Jazz tomorrow morning from Los Angeles at some point after I get my blue bottle.
At the pool?
No, I'll do it from the hotel. My wife's coming into town. Can you believe it? I know.
Mm-hmm.
I got like a restaurant, the nice. You know, I got my wife to come. No, never mind. Last time I made a joke about my wife on the air, she happened to be listening. So I'm never doing it ever again.
Just tell me, I'll say it. Just tell me, I'll say it.
I don't know if you guys know this story. So I have the greatest wife in the world. She and Ron are super, super close. And I don't know what was going on in the broadcast, but we were like in some weird conversation, and I decided to like change it, and I kind of like just totally overly zealously fabricated a story about my wife that wasn't totally true at all. My wife listens to our broadcasts like almost none. Like
never.
Yeah,
almost never.
She's probably listened to as many broadcast minutes as Johnny Juzang has had so far this year for the Jazz. So on this day, we had friends in town, and they couldn't get an Uber. So my wife drove them to the airport. I didn't know this. Part of the reason is because Signal doesn't get to the house. And she happened to be driving back from the airport. Well, I didn't like sort of throw her under the bus. Like I threw her under the bus, drove it over once or twice. It was all for entertainment purposes. I'm really glad I'm still married. I love her dearly. I appreciate her forgiving me for that. She was super mad. So today,
I heard that. No, that's what she said.
She
I
was
heard that.
super mad.
Yeah.
I was so scared to drive home that night. So tonight, I will not make up a story for the sake of entertainment to make you all laugh. Have a good one.